the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York Town. Oh, the...
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove Live with 3/4 of the Mets Roundtable. We got Chris, we got Hayden. We only got Hayden here for about 20 minutes because you could see his Bills jersey tonight going for the the AFC East division.
AFC East.
We're going to get started really, really quickly, so don't forget, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, everybody. Let's get right into it and say what up to Hayden. Hayden, good luck to your Bills tonight. And
Thank you.
all right, good. What's up? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, Rob has the American League on his mind.
Yeah.
What's going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden here. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Like Rob said, Bills play tonight. Shocker, I'm a Bills fan. I think most of you guys know that by now. So they play tonight, clinched a playoff spot. So super happy about that. So tonight's for the division. Frank the Tank, who is a Dolphins fan, will probably have one of the biggest rages as another one of his teams chokes the division away once again. So I'm sure that'll be fun. Let's go Bills. But this is baseball oriented. So obviously Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. News, live streams, analysis, all that great stuff. I did like 4 videos this week, which is a miracle. I mean, that's never happened before. I think the last time that happened, George Bush was probably in office when that happened. So, 4 videos. If you could check those out, please do. Otherwise, let's go Mets. And like I said, I'm only on here for 5 minutes, but I just wanted to pop on, say what's up. And and the Twins hat is always on. It's good luck.
Absolutely. And Chris, what's up, buddy? How's it going? And congratulations, I guess. It is in order since what we spoke about before the stream.
It's a nice win. We dropped back in the draft, but it's a nice win. I'll always take beating the Eagles. But yeah, honestly, we got a lot to talk about with the Mets. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I'm not in my usual setup, so sorry if the lighting looks funky in the backdrop, all that good stuff. But we got a lot to talk about. Manaea signing is great. Subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Subscribe to all 3 of us. My channel's all the way almost to 400 subscribers, so I definitely appreciate everyone's support. It means a lot to me. So all New York sports talk on my channel, and you know where to find me. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. That's Hayden. That's Chris. Make sure you subscribe to their channels. And let's get right into the first topic of the day. It's the obvious topic. Early this morning, around 4:30-ish, 5 o'clock in the morning. The Mets signed Sean Manaea. That came out of nowhere. We know they were interested in them and in Ryu and Manaea and God knows who else. And very early in the morning, the Mets seemed like they like to, make moves late at night. And the last couple of seasons, ever since Coleman took over, it seems like it's a late at night, early morning acquisitions, either through free agency or trades that go down. And Sean Manaea is the New York Met for 2 years, $28 million. With an opt-out after the first year, and this is another sign-in that is another technically 1-year sign-in. If he has a really good year, he is going to opt out for a bigger deal. But if he's he'll stay and he'll get a $14 million contract for the second year. So Hayden, before we'll go over this one topic before you have to go root on your Bills tonight. What do you think of the deal? What do you think of the signing? Again, we talked about this. Everybody did videos about this over the last couple of days or so. And, we know we needed arms in the rotation, good or bad, mid-rotation guy. We know he went to this driveline pitching lab to figure things out. Why? I guess I don't know if he was trying to get his velocity up in the lab, or was he just trying to find new pitches or just a new way to pitch, just to because he's still young. And when he was with Oakland, he was throwing harder. And when he wasn't in Oakland and went to the other teams, he kind of lost miles per hour off this fastball. So Hayden, let me ask you, what do you think about the signing, and what do you think why going to the drive line? Do you like that he went to that pitching lab, and could he be better than he actually is? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to answer both of those questions, I mean, the first one, I love the move of Manaea. Low risk, high reward. Once again, 28 million, 2 years, has that player opt out split in between. That way, maybe that can get him. That way, that can give him a little bit more of an incentive personally to really play better, really have a good year. So if he goes above expectations, he could opt out and try and maybe get a little bit more capital on his end. But I mean, it's a good deal. Like like you said, he's young. He's 31 years old at prime age. He's a lefty, something that the Mets really have always lacked left-handed pitching. Now it's safe to say that you are stacked with left-handed pitching. I mean, this is a lefty stacked team, which I really do like. I really do value that. Um, so really good news there. Throws good stuff, good arsenal of pitches, mixes up his pitches very well. He developed that sweeper last year. I think it was in like over the summer, so probably like June, July. I think I read on somewhere that he started to develop that, and that's been a very, very good put away pitch for him, a very good lethal pitch. The fastball, obviously, his velocity has increased 2 miles per hour. So, like we said, him going to that line drive, pitching, whatever, and I think that's going to benefit him. When he was with Oakland, he was a very good pitcher. Not saying he wasn't with the Padres and Giants. With the Giants, it was hard because they kind of put him into a reliever role, which wasn't probably the smartest thing to do with a pitcher like Manaea. With the type of arsenal of pitchers that he has, I guess he's very similar to a guy like Joey Lucchesi. I think you could kind of say when it comes to the stuff, the movement, the break, the velocity. So, I mean, another Lucchesi type pitcher, maybe a little. Actually, I think they'd be probably about the same exactly. So, I think it's a really good move overall. Hopefully, it benefits them. Low end, back end of the rotation. So, I mean, where will he slot in? Probably anywhere 4 or 5. I'd reckon. So overall, really, really like the signing. Like I said, this isn't your go get him pitcher. This isn't your star. This isn't your ace. But I think with what he can do, and the expectations he has, he could easily go above and beyond those expectations that he currently has. So we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, let him work with Hefner on going back to the type of pitcher that he was somewhat with the Padres and particularly with the Oakland Athletics. Because I mean, that's the case, then I mean he's really going to thrive in this setting. So I'll have to wait and see. But I like the move.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, he was in the bullpen a lot for the Giants. Again, he was in 37 games. He started 10 of them. So again, he for the last 2 seasons he was going over he was going through that pitching lab, and his 10 games started was really when he started to really kick it off really, really much better, and he's seen a difference in velocity and movement and everything like that. So Chris, I'm going to ask you, we talk, everybody talked about it in the stream, in the group chat. I think it's a good signing. Again, if he is that type of pitcher with that extra velocity and that new pitch, that new sweeper that he has, he is that lefty pitcher that, like Hayden says, is kind of like a Lucchesi prior to that uptick in velocity. What do you think of the signing, and what do you think this lab is going to help him be a better pitcher, or do you think he's going to go back to what we saw prior with his 4.4 ERA to 4.9 ERA over the last 2 seasons, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, how I feel about it. I've talked about it on my channel. I talked about it on the Mets Hot Stove Live. I like the signing for the New York Mets. I think that he has a lot of good stuff. I think the Mets have been missing that power fastball. And it was very evident last season. I'm not saying guys can't get it up to 96, 97, but Manaea, reinvigorated from the left-handed side of the mound, just looks a little bit different in terms of the arm angle. Hayden mentioned the sweeper. Someone mentioned in the comment section he kind of shied away from that a little bit, but he still threw it for about 10.5% of his pitch usage in the totality of 2023. You go on his Baseball Savant page. I know a lot of people like results over the advanced metrics, but the movement on his fastball, the movement on his off speed is top tier. He has an arsenal of a sweeper slider to go along with that power fastball. And I really do think the whole point for me in terms of signing Sean Manaea was to get him here on a 2-year deal, which is exactly what the New York Mets did. And we talked about the reason why, because if Luis Severino doesn't work out and the Mets don't intend to re-sign him, he hits the open market. Hauser's hitting the open market. Quintana's hitting the open market. You need a guy in the back end to not only solidify the rotation in 2024, but also provide that relief and that flexibility for your rotation in 2025. And I know a lot of people like to say, if anything, the 2024 New York Mets, whatever they end up, if they're not in the race come the MLB trade deadline this coming season in August, then these pieces are all movable assets, which is absolutely true. But I think with the way that the Mets rotation is, they're not in the market of trading Sean Manaea. He's going to be riding out that contract with the New York Mets. And so, unless something drastically changes with this rotation in the 2025 offseason, Sean Manaea is not going anywhere. They realized that they were not going to be able to bank on Luis Severino and his workload. They're not going to be able to bank on perhaps a Jose Quintana and his workload. Sean Manaea gets you 100+ innings consistently, and you can bank on that. He's done so in each of the last 3 seasons. That's exactly why I like the signing. And a lot of people like to talk about 4.44 ERA last season, 4.9 ERA the season before that. I understand that. The immediate results weren't there. And I understand a lot of people don't like the advanced metrics. But when you look at Sean Manaea's ability and his tool set as a pitcher beyond just what the 4.4 ERA tells you, it tells you that he has higher upside than what he's shown in the last 2 seasons. And like Hayden said, and like you said, Rob, 31 years old. There is an opt-out somewhere in between there, right? Like Joel's pointing out. So it's not like the Mets are married to Sean Manaea. They're not married to each other, which makes this a hell of a lot better of a signing. And you talk about a Lucas Giolito who's making $19 million with the Red Sox. He also posted a 4 whatever ERA last season, split between 3 clubs. And we get Sean Manaea at 14 mil per. That's a steal if you ask me. Lucas Giolito's not hitting 98 on the gun. You know what I mean? So I like everything we get from Sean Manaea. And a lot of people in my mentions on Twitter today were in an uproar when I said this is a great signing for the Mets. I understand that. This is if I was judging this offseason in a light where I thought that the Mets were supposed to win the division in 2024, of course I wouldn't say Sean Manaea is a great signing. But judging and talking about this team on this Hot Stove Live with you two gentlemen up here and talking to this audience over here, we're analyzing this team objectively in terms of what this front office has told us the plan is for 2024 versus 2025. And therefore, Sean Manaea is a great signing when you look at everybody that's still on the market in terms of what their plan is and not tying themselves into something long-term that they don't feel comfortable in, whether it's Montgomery or Snell.
Yeah.
And I hate to have to come up here and repeat myself on that same point 5 times over, but I feel like a lot of people aren't understanding that. Whether it's on here in the comment section, you guys are all bright individuals, but on Twitter as well. Like people just can't seem to grasp that because I think people are still living in a fairy tale land where they think the Mets are supposed to be competing for a division with the Phillies and Braves this upcoming season. And that's a pipe dream. It's not happening. So let's let that go. Sean Manaea, great signing, great stuff. And I think that he has the ability and the tool set to be better than what we saw statistically last 2 seasons. He has everything in his arsenal to provide him the ability to do so. That's my 2 cents on Sean Manaea.
Yeah, I'm going to get a little further in what you talked about. Hayden, I know you got to go. So let's go Bills for today at least. So enjoy your little bar party type of thing to watch your Bills, and good luck tonight, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Let's go Buffalo.
All right, man. All right, guys, just give me 1 second. Let me just set up for me and Chris, and we'll be ready to go. All right, there we go. I think we're a little.
By the way, hit that thumbs up button if you guys haven't. Hit that thumbs up.
Absolutely. Please hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button, guys. So again, what Chris was saying is absolutely correct. This is, again, I don't even think if the Mets had a crazy offseason, if they would have signed Yamamoto, signed Monty, signed Jorge Soler, people still wouldn't believe that the Mets would be good enough to win the division, right? It's mostly all about the wild card, no matter what the Mets did, because, coming off a 75-win season, you're not expected to win probably 100 games, considering the fact that it's not really a hope situation. Even if they would have done all that, it's just the fact of the matter is everybody probably believes, and when you do your predictions for the year, expect, even if the Mets had a great offseason, to win the division. It's still probably about the wild card. Even if you win 94, 95 games, it's still a wild card. I think 100, 101 wins is probably where the Braves are going to be. And I don't think the Mets, even if they had a great offseason, is probably more than a 95, 96 win team at the very best if they would have got all the top names on the market minus Ohtani. So I think we're looking at it in the wrong way. And, Sean Manaea is a good pitcher. Again, imagine if the Mets look at the pitchers that they got in, right? Besides Severino, right? The four ERAs that these pitchers are, right? That we already got, right? If we would have had those guys that actually pitched every fifth day for the most part and gave you the starts that were needed and guys that give you innings, the Mets would have been a lot better off last year, and they would have probably been a 500 team or a little bit better than a 500 team. And guess what? That would have got you close to a third wild card spot. And we're looking at the spots in the wild card of the first, second, and third wild card, most likely the second and third wild card, which is going to be between 83 and 88 wins, because that's what it is every year. And I went over this about a week ago on a hot stove I did on my own. There's a lot of 78, 82, 85 win teams in between. There's about 6, 7, 8 teams that are in that mix where, one good month can put you right into that mix. And again, the Reds, the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, those teams had one really, really, really good month that were about 7, 8, 9 games over 500 in that month. And it catapulted them to the third wildcard spot, at least around that third wildcard spot, that got them into the playoffs. And we're so focused on just the division when there's other ways to make the playoffs. And if we haven't learned anything as baseball fans, is that winning the division, yes, it's nice. It's nice to put up that banner. It's nice to, pump your chest a little bit against your NL East rivals. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean absolutely anything. All it means is that you get, most likely, you get a worse team that you're going to face, or if you got the best record in the National League, you get the bye. And that is not always the best way to go through the postseason with these extra teams. And Chris, I'm not saying that we're going to win 95 games here, but what it does show is that the Mets give themselves options going into the season. The Mets have a good few months before the trade deadline. Well, guess what? You get to keep those guys that are trying to pitch their way to a contract, and on top of that, you go at the trade deadline and make moves to make your team better. Because I do think if the Mets are within striking distance of a wild card spot, any of them, or in the mix, they're going to make trades at the deadline. And if they're not, if everybody expects them to be bad and they aren't good in the first half, these are tradable contracts, and you can get more assets for what you're building up in 2025's offseason, Chris.
Yeah, and like I said, we can talk about wild card scenarios all day until we're blue in the face. Listen, 75 win team last year with nothing statistically behind Kodai Senga. You've said this point time and time again. We had David Peterson with a 5+ ERA. We had Carlos Carrasco with a 6+ ERA. We had Tyler McGill with a 4.7 ERA. What did we have statistically behind Kodai Senga? Justin Verlander was okay. He was decent, not great. Max Scherzer sucked. We're adding guys that maybe are equivalent to a little bit better in terms of statistics purely than what we had last season, with the exception of Luis Severino, right? Sean Manaea, 4.4 ERA, is probably the third starter on the New York Mets team last season, right? So you couple that with a healthy Quintana coming back, who did fairly decent in the second half of the season. You couple that with a Kodai Senga, who's already established as an ace. I don't think the Mets are in a terrible position. But even nonetheless, even given that, take playoffs aside and making the playoffs aside, I understand that's the goal. We want to win, and we want to win each and every season. We're not aiming for any lost seasons. The Mets have a plan and they're sticking to it. And nothing about this plan they have lied to the general public about.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, correct. 100%. And I'm just looking at the National League ERA leaders, okay? You know who was number 2? Kodai Senga. There was only 2 pitchers in the National League that had under a 3 ERA. And Kodai Senga didn't even have he was the top 5 or 6 in the Cy Young voting. And he was better than Justin Steele, who got more Cy Young votes. He was better than Logan Webb, better than Merrill Kelly, better than Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Luzardo, and Zach Wheeler. And by the way, Zach Wheeler, who was the ace of the staff for the Phillies, had a 3.61 ERA. And we're talking about Kodai Senga like he's the number 3, yet he was the second best pitcher ERA-wise in the National League. He had a 2.98 ERA. Now, do I expect him to pitch under a 3 ERA? Why not? I mean, he did it with all the things were thrown at him as his first season in Major League Baseball. He didn't pitch a lot of innings early on, and I do expect the Mets to make him pitch every 5th day, and I think he'll be fine. I think he got used to it. He's going to do it in spring training, and he got better over time. Usually, especially a new pitcher in Major League Baseball, over time, people have a book on you. You think he would get worse or at least stay the same as he did early on. He got extremely better because he was pitching too close to a 3.5, 3.7 ERA in the first about few months of the season. And then he got even better. And he learned how to pitch every 5th day. And he didn't pitch often every 5th day, except in the second half. He kind of did. The fact of the matter is, if the Mets are looking at Kodai Senga, excuse me, as an ace, which we might not all agree with, and probably most of us don't, but he is the second best pitcher ERA-wise in the National League. That's something to say, considering the fact that guys that were in the playoffs, Merrill Kelly, Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Luzardo, Wheeler, he had better ERAs than all of those guys, and guess what those guys were? Those guys were top-end rotation guys, and it's not talked about enough. We talk about Kodai Senga like he was an average pitcher. He was not. Now, was he an average pitcher in the first couple of months? Absolutely. But the second half, he showed you he can be an ace of the staff. And again, we don't look at him like that because we look at the 5-year, $75 million as a steal, because it was. Like, if we got a starter that pitched to his capability, it would be 6-7 years over $160 to $200 million based on his statistics. And guess what? That's Montgomery, and that is Blake Snell. And the Mets probably aren't doing that. Montgomery's probably out of the question now because of the fact I don't think they're going to put a third lefty in this rotation. I don't think they want to go that far rotation-wise. But, hey, you never know, because the Mets are still linked to Montgomery again. People are starting to talk about that again, which is very interesting. But in the Sean Manaea case and the Kodai Senga case, if Kodai Senga, in the Mets' eyes, again, not our eyes, in Stern's eyes, and Cohen's eyes, if they believe Senga can be a top-line starter in a rotation, because if you look at his numbers, he was. And he'll pitch more innings this year, and he got better over time, Chris. The Sean Manaea signing is good within itself, but if they believe Senga is the ace, what do you see as number 2, 3, 4, 5? If you give us a rotation right now, before we talk about trade options in the starting pitching market, what do you think the rotation looks at if this is the rotation going into 2024?
This is the rotation going into 2024. I mean, you'd almost have to say Kodai is the number 1, right? That's obvious. Probably rolling into the season with Quintana and Severino as 2 and 3, Manaea as your 4, and then honestly, I'd give Lucchesi the 5 spot. And if you want to go 6-man, you'd have to throw Jose Butto in there. Yep. I'm not with Tyler McGill. I'm not with David Peterson. I know he's on the shelf for half a season, but that's your rotation. Now, like I said, is that appealing to anybody? No, it's not appealing to anybody. It remains to be seen, even if the Mets are going to be willing to sign another starter. But like I said, I'm not judging this offseason in a way that I'm expecting the Mets to go out there and make a huge playoff push. Yeah. I'd be lucky. We'd be lucky to see a wild card spot with this team. I think this team can piece an 80 85 win season together, nothing more than that. If I had to project them right now, we got asked this on the live, I think on the Interstate Mets report before. I project this team right now as it stands at 81 to 82 wins tops. And that's my objective. Like, that's my objective because I can't give them anything more than that because on paper, they're not better than that. Let's be honest. But on paper doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. Like, everybody knows that. On paper means nothing. The 2023 Mets showed why having a team like that on paper meant absolutely nothing. So, like I said, that's probably the rotation moving forward, and that's how I would shake it out. Maybe they want to save Lucchesi for the bullpen. They throw Tyler McGill in the back end there. I don't know. I don't know to what degree Jose Buto is going to be sort of filling in this season. It all depends on what the Mets do from now until opening day to address the starting pitching market. You have reports saying that they're still interested in XYZ starting pitchers, which we're going to get into here in a second. And then you have conflicting reports like Will Salmon from The Athletic, who covers the Mets, saying that after the Manaea signing, that they are presumably done adding starting pitching. There's two sides. There's two reports coming in. So I personally find it hard to believe that the Mets are rolling into the 2024 without signing or trading for another pitcher in that starting rotation. But if they are done, that's what you got. What I just listed is what we got. So I don't know what you think about that, Rob, but it would be crazy to me if they don't go after a starting pitcher.
Yeah, again, I agree with you. I still think they're going to make a trade for a top line starting pitcher, and they're going to go with this rotation. If they do, then they're playing for the first half. A see what happens approach in the first half. And I'm okay with that only because of the fact that if they are truly doing that, then whatever Cohen said in or in his press conference that they're going to take a methodical approach in 2024 and 2025 is where it's going to be at, then he really never lied to us. This is what he's doing, and this is what he wants Stearns to do in 2024 to reset the payroll that all this money's coming off the books, because I think the Sean Manaea signing had their payroll to be about $310 million in total at the moment. And again, they have to still get another bat and a couple of bullpen pieces, which is probably going to allow this payroll to go between $340 and $350 million just on adding a few more players in the bullpen and another bat if they're going to go that route.
What is it right now? It's at like 295 right now, right? I mean, after the Bader signing.
I think with arbitration stuff like that, it's going to probably hit around 310.
No, it's more than that because when we did Interstate back on Friday, they signed Bader. It was at 283 plus 10.5. That's 95, give or take, plus 14. That's about 310 we're looking at right now at the current moment. And maybe give or take maybe $5 to $7 million. So we're about 310 to 317 in payroll right now. And that goes to show you we're that high in payroll, and look at the roster we have. And you wanted this team to go and sign Snell and Montgomery and XYZ and all these guys when they already have a mediocre roster. Well, I'm going to call them mediocre because that's what they are. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a mediocre roster. Let's see if they get the wild card, and let's play it by ear till the deadline. And you expected, with the way they're handcuffed with this cap as it is, with this roster on paper, for them to go after a Jordan Montgomery? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't think they will. But you're talking about another extra $100 million getting into the $400 millions in payroll for what? For what? Because if you add Jordan Montgomery to this rotation, they're not even half as good as the Braves or the Dodgers, even still.
Yeah, and even if they don't sign Jordan Montgomery and they go after a guy like Dylan Cease or Burns or Bieber, those guys are making what, 12, 13, 8, about between 9 and like $13 million based on arbitration. So that's another $13, $14 million added to a payroll. And again, even if Cohen doesn't even try, he's going to have a $350, $360 million payroll on what most people perceive as a 82-win team or, a 500 team. So for anybody who thinks they're punting, they're not. They are playing for the first half. They're going to say, all right, this is what we're going to do. We have a lot of tradable contracts that we have on this roster. If it doesn't work out in the first half, the Mets are going to trade these guys. Now, we can talk about the Alonso. That's for another day. If that's going to happen, if they're going to trade Alonso at the deadline, if it's at the point where they're like, listen, Pete, we're going to get assets for you. We are going to do everything we can to re-sign you as long as you allow us to after the season. So come talk to us, but we want to get assets in there. There's no reason why there can't be an under the table discussion with Pete Alonso and saying, listen, we can get assets back and we can have a conversation with you in the offseason to get you back because we want you back. But in the Mets' best interest, it is best to trade you if we're not going to sign an extension with you right now because of the fact that it does not make sense to hold on to him, don't get no assets, and risk losing him, even though I don't think that's going to happen, risk losing him at the free agent market because they're playing for the first half, Chris. There's no doubt about that. And as we get into the Dylan Cease trade rumors, where the Mets apparently are back in these sweepstakes, and I think because I think the White Sox lowered their price a little bit, and that's why the Mets came back into this whole sweepstakes aspects of Dylan Cease, because a couple of weeks ago, or even a week ago, we weren't even close to being in this Dylan Cease conversation. But the fact of the matter is, the Mets are playing for the first half. They're in a wait and see approach. Now, they're going to get a couple of bullpen arms, most likely going to get another bat for the DH, Chris. With the Dylan Cease situation, last week, we thought the Mets, there was no way they were going to be in a Dylan Cease trade because it was going to be too much. They were asking for 4 top premium prospects. And then Joel Sherman came out with an article saying that the Yankees and the Orioles seem like the favorites, but the Mets came back into the sweepstakes because now the White Sox are looking for 3 premium top 10 prospects now in the Joel Sherman article. So what does that tell you, Chris? Is the fact that the price probably dropped a little bit? That's why the Mets are back in it, because Dylan Cease is another quote-unquote reclamation project at the top line of the rotation where he can have a 2.2 ERA like he did 2 years ago, or even, 2 years ago in 2022, or he's a guy that the Mets can bring in and say, all right, if he pitched in between a 2.2 and a 4.8, which he basically was the last 2 seasons, and he pitches to a 3.6, 3.7, what do you think? Do you think the Mets are really in on Dylan Cease? Because that's an interesting article from Joel Sherman the other day that he's putting the Mets back into these sweepstakes. Why do you think that is? Even do you think they're out of it because of the Manaea signing, or do you really think they're trying for that top line starter in the trade market?
First of all, I don't give a damn what Joel Sherman says. Joel Sherman's a fraud. I don't like that guy. I don't like half of these MLB reporters because they just like to throw the Mets into some of these articles just to spice things up for one reason or another. That's first off. So everyone out there, if you go pay attention to your Joel Shermans, your John Morosi's, your Heyman sometimes, like just take it with a grain of salt. But that being said, before the Manaea signing, I was a little bit more confident about a potential Cease trade. I saw Bauer on the screen here. We're going to be talking about him next, but a Cease trade. I'm not so confident anymore, to be honest with you, with the way that I'm, from what I'm hearing and what Will Salmon's saying from The Athletic, and I trust his word a little bit more than some of these other mainstream guys, to be honest with you. I don't really know if I trust it. And yes, MEZ, I know he's a longtime vet in the game, but all of these reporters that go mainstream have agendas, and Joel Sherman definitely has shown that he has an agenda as well. That's all I'll say about that. Anyways, the price might have dropped, right? But there's a certain limitation that I'd go for Dylan Cease. And honestly, I don't know if the Mets can afford to lose Christian Scott, like Sanders is saying there. In a pitching class in the minor league system for the New York Mets that's already thin enough, Christian Scott and Blade Tidwell, right? 2 guys that probably headline it with a couple guys mixed in there between. I know Vassal's the most ready. I'm not sure if I'm in the business of giving up Christian Scott, even if that meant Dylan Cease walks in the doors. The price has to be right. Your Alex Ramirez's, your Kevin Parada's. You know what? I'm going to say it. I know a lot of people are high on him, even your Ryan Cliffords. I think that you can go ahead and potentially try to deal for the right sort of situation. I need to know what Dylan Cease's market is, because if other teams, it depends on how many other teams are in play. It depends on who those teams are and what farm system they have to give up. And it really depends on what the White Sox are looking for. If they are looking for position players in return, because let's face it, They are tearing everything down from top to bottom. If they are looking for both pitchers or position players and they don't have any sort of preference of the two, then sure, the Mets are in a great spot because they have all the position players in the world to give up. Even your Colin Houks, who are very far off and are in that middle infield, that packed middle infield within the Mets farm systems. Mets can give them up all day. Okay, great. But when you talk about your Christian Scott, your Blade Tidwells, I'm not the biggest prospect hugger. Everyone knows that about me. That I've come on here and I say just send it, give me the proven player. But this is a unique situation. So I'm not confident in a Dylan Cease trade. Honestly, I know you say that you think that the Mets might make a top of the line trade here even before the offseason begins. I'm starting to think that might not be as feasible, but it depends on who it is. I will say that it depends on who it is. So
we don't know what David Stearns is thinking here, right? He might already evaluated some of these prospects and saying, all right, these guys are assets to our long-term goal, or these are guys, and we talk about this all the time about, all these prospects. They're all not going to play. They're all not going to be on this team. It's not mathematically, it can't happen because you can only have 26 guys on a roster. And if you think that, 3 or 4 of these guys out of your top 10 are going to be, your future, because Kevin Parada has no place on this team, right? Everybody believes that Francisco Escobar is going to be our catcher for the next 10 years. Kevin Parada is not going to be a part of this team. If they're going to see Ryan Clifford as a trade piece, they're going to see it as a trade piece. And like you just said, we don't know what the White Sox want. Do the White Sox want pitching? Because if the White Sox want 2 out of the 3 top 10 prospects being pitchers, the Mets are probably out because they're not giving Christian Scott. They might give Tidwell, they might give Stewart or Hamill, but I don't think they're giving Christian Scott. And if the White Sox want him in the trade, I don't think the Mets are going to do that. And I think the Mets are back into the sweepstakes, whatever you want to hear, because what I'm seeing on the White Sox situation, I pulled up their prospect list right now. They got 5 top 5 out of 10 top prospects are starting pitchers, and they're all seemingly ready to go 2023, 2024. All these guys, except for one in Nolan Schultz 2026. But even their top 11 through 15 are all starting pitchers, and they're all projected to be up next year in 2025. So they have a ton of pitchers in their farm system. So are they looking for pitchers? Because they got a shortstop, a catcher, and a third baseman that are all in their top 10 that are one of them is ready in 2024, or 2 of them are in 2024. So what are they looking for? We don't know, right? Because if you look at the Yankees, they give up a lot of their pitching prospects in the Soto Verdugo deal. So they're limited in pitching prospects as well. And they're looking at trading position player prospects because they only got maybe one top of the line starting pitching prospect, which the Mets also could have if it's not Christian Scott. Because if you look at the Tidwells and the Stewart, they're actually ranked higher than what the Yankee top pitching prospect is now in their system. The Orioles have the best pitching prospect pool. But I don't know if they're willing to trade it because they have shown no indication that they're willing to trade their young guys. Because are they going to trade Dylan Cease for 2 years knowing that they're not going to sign him because they're not spending money? The fact of the matter is that if the White Sox are looking for position players in a deal, since they have a ton of pitching prospects in their system, then the Mets have exactly what the White Sox. This is another Juan Soto to the Yankees perfect scenario. The Yankees had pitching prospects and pitchers that the Padres were looking for. They were looking for 3-4 pitching prospects, and the Yankees had that. It was a perfect match. If the Mets are willing to give position player prospects, and the White Sox are looking for that, because the White Sox might like the prospects that the Mets have over the Orioles or the Yankees prospects just based on what they're looking for. We don't know. And I think that's the reason why you're hearing not just Joe Sherman, but it's starting to be quiet again on the trade front. And again, when the Mets are very quiet in a front, in an aspect of an offseason, they tend to start doing something. And you know what? Maybe it's another Chris Bassett type of trade. A guy that, is a solid pitcher, where Chris Bassett pitched a 3.2 ERA with the Mets in 2022. If that's another type of trade that he's looking for, a Freddie Peralta type of trade, maybe they're looking for that type of trade as well, not just a Dylan Cease, Chris. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that's a lot more feasible. I think that's a lot more feasible to go ahead and pull a deal for Bassett, right? And we didn't see that trade coming. And just to go back on the Dylan Cease talks, it's like if teams it doesn't matter if it's Dylan Cease or anybody else, if teams are willing to sort of accept and talk on position players and they're willing to forego the pitching prospects, you'd be hard-pressed to find another team that's in a better position than the New York Mets to trade for said player. I know the Baltimore Orioles come to mind. Maybe one or two other teams could definitely put together as strong of a package. But the New York Mets have done everything in their realm of possibility to make that the case, where if they really want to go get a player, they have all the tools to do so. Now, like I said, I don't think it's going to be for Dylan Cease. I don't think it's going to be for that top-of-the-line starter that we all hope. But I think it's going to be for more of like a low end 2, maybe a 3, a solid 3, like Chris Bassett was coming over from the Athletics, I believe it was when he came. Or was it the Blue? No, where was he? He's the Athletics, right? Is the A's, right? Yeah, exactly. So my memory's escaping me because then he went to the Jays. So yeah, that's exactly what I think the Mets are actually going to do. Now, like I said, they have pitchers right now. So like we can talk about who the Mets want to give up or who they want to get, but you have to talk about their already crowded starting pitching sort of class right now and what you're going to do with those excess of players. Like what happens to a Tyler McGill if you go and sign another starting pitcher? Now, any starting pitcher that the Mets trade for or sign, I'd almost rather have that pitcher, even without knowing a name directly, than Tyler McGill. Same thing with David Peterson. I think we all would, right? But you can't just like sign somebody or whatnot and then just like not have a plan for said player unless you're just going to DFA them straight up.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Mets are in the business of doing that right now. So there has to be a plan, right? Every move has to have a counter plan to it to address your 40-man roster at this juncture. And by the way, the 40-man roster with his Manaea signing is at the full capacity, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, we talked about it in the group chat. That the 40-man roster is full, but again, there's a couple of guys with options there where they can get sent down to the minors or they can get released. So it can get back down to 37 rather quickly. And again, if the Mets make another sign-in or a trade, or technically a sign-in, if it is a Montgomery or or here we go, a Trevor Bauer, they got to add him to the 40-man. So in that case, what about Bauer, right? I know we're talking about the 40-man, but they're gonna have to. If they got to get 2 or 3 bullpen arms, say 2 bullpen arms and another bat. That's 3 extra guys on the 40-man, which they're gonna have to make moves just to add those guys that they acquired to their 40-man. So, and that's the whole thing because we signed about 47 bullpen arms that we don't know if any of those guys are going to make it, and some of them are part of the 40-man and some of them are not, and you're going to have to add those guys. So there's going to be a lot of movement over the 40-man roster over the next 2 months for sure, even if the Mets don't even make any more sign-ins. Say if the Mets make 2 bullpen arms sign-ins and they still got to make a ton of moves just to add on the guys that they want as bullpen arms that are going to make the roster. So if the Mets aren't going after Dylan Cease or a trade for Burns or Bieber and not going after Snell or Montgomery, Trevor Bauer is a top-line starting pitcher. We know about the off-field issues. We know they're despicable. We know he's an asshole. We know he's a piece of shit for what he was. Even if he is innocent of those charges, the fact of the matter is he's consensual or not. Those are some crazy stuff that he was into, and mentally, that is a little, fucked up. Let's be honest. Like, if that's, it's considered rough sex, but let's be honest, it's kind of crazy shit that he was doing, even if it was consensual. Are you willing to sign Trevor Bauer because he said money's not an issue. He wants to get back into the league. Say if it's a 1-year, $8 million deal and he pitches to that number one or number two level, and the Mets aren't good. He'll be on the trade market as well. Do you think the Mets are willing to take the PR hit, considering the fact of the off-field crap with Bauer, because he is that 1 year cheap option that the Mets are seemingly willing to give out in the open market right now, Chris?
I don't think it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. As you could put it as, and anybody in the chat and you, Rob, like anybody who like would like to see this happen, right? As logic as it sounds from a pure baseball perspective, in terms of a extremely cheap contract for the talent level of a guy like Trevor Bauer, I don't think the New York Mets or a lot of other teams in this league are in a position to take that kind of PR hit and to accept that type of guy into their clubhouse, who, even before this all came out, was already headlining, the Major League Baseball for one reason or another, whether it was locker room issues, clubhouse issues, him calling out Rob Manfred, which he also apologized for in the fan interview that he did over there a couple days ago. I don't think that the Mets specifically are in a position to take that PR hit. I don't. And I don't think it helps the fact that the Mets and Bauer already did this 1.0 kind of talking point back in 2021, and he curved the Mets for the Dodgers. I don't think that helps number two, because Cohen and him already talked. It was in 2021 before all these news stories and all the allegations started to come out. So I don't think the Mets are in any position to sign Trevor Bauer, to take that PR hit. Anybody can go out and sign Trevor Bauer. Anybody can do it. It makes sound sense from a baseball perspective, but it just doesn't make sense to bring that sort of energy and that sort of publicity to your team, which is anything but good. It's horrible. So I just don't see it happening. And like I said, we could talk about the X's and O's from a baseball perspective all we want. And with this rotation looking the way it is, that's an easy way out to go say, let's go get a Trevor Bauer. I just don't think it's going to happen. And the way I talk about this situation objectively, if I don't think something's going to happen, I'm not going to say it just to say it. Like it's 95%, percent certain that it's not happening. I don't think David Stearns wants that kind of energy around the clubhouse in his first year as president of baseball operations and acting GM either. I think a lot of people don't also take that into consideration. This is David Stearns' first year. So bringing that type of risk into your club within itself from that aspect is also not probably a good look for David Stearns. So I'm out on Bauer, and I think the Mets are out on Bauer as well.
Yeah, well, it comes down to this. Are the Mets looking for stats, or are they looking for, are they just looking at the stats, looking at, what could be as a cheap alternative to a Monty or a Snell that could be an A-side pitcher? Are they just looking at the performance aspect and taking the PR hit? I mean, that's what we don't know, right? Obviously, we all have our own morals here. And, I've said this on my channel. I even said it during my instant reaction after his interview when it came to Bauer. As sports fans, we root for teams players that have done domestic violence, that have been felons, that have been criminals, that it's very hard to look at, what Bauer did or domestic violence as a whole and say that it's probably not one of the most despicable things. I mean, pedophilia is probably, up the number one, but what domestic violence is probably up there as one of the most despicable things you can do as a human being. And, we're still baseball fans. We're still sports fans, right? We root for football teams. We root for basketball teams, hockey teams, baseball teams. Almost every one of those teams in every one of those sports have had issues with domestic violence. And we still root for those teams. We still root for those players on the field. Not saying we root for these guys off the field. If Bauer strikes out the side and strikes out Ronald Acuna Jr. in a big spot, we're going to cheer. Not that we're going to have a beer with Trevor Bauer or any of the players that might be, that might have an issue off the field, say a domestic violence issue. We're going to root for them. And I'm sorry that I'm being blunt here, but it's a fact. We care after the fact. During the fact, we don't care. Morally, we might say, oh, as soon as he strikes out the side and he goes into the dugout, I might call him an asshole and a piece of shit. But you know what? If he strikes out the side in a big game, are we really going to care? And it comes back to the moral issue of teams, right? We had two players that were big part of this organization a couple of years ago in Jose Reyes and Juris Familia, who were convicted of beating their girlfriend or their significant other. And they were a big part of this organization that fans loved. In 2015, Juris Familia was the best closer in baseball. And, he hit his wife and he was convicted. They went to jail. They didn't stay in jail, but they got convicted of these charges. Yet we treat them like they weren't convicted. Bauer wasn't convicted. He was considered innocent in the eyes of the law. Again, you don't have to believe that, but he was. And he lost a lot of money because of allegations. And, again, we're rooting for football teams, hockey teams, basketball teams that have players that already are charged and convicted of charge of domestic violence. Yet we still root for those teams. And again, I'm not saying you, Chris, but anybody in this chat, if you really hate the person and what he might have done, say if he was convicted and charged, because he's talented, there's going to be a team to pick him up. What if the Braves pick him up? What are the Phillies going to pick him up? Are you going to have a different thought process as a baseball fan when he's striking out Pete Alonso, when he's striking out Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor in a big spot and helping the Braves go deep in the playoffs? Are you going to care then? That's the problem.
The Braves already showed their willingness to do that by keeping Marcell Ozuna as a repeat offender. So,
well, you know what? But the Braves are not the only team, Chris. The Mets are too. They're part of the problem too. The sports are a part of the problem. If you're talented, look, Ray Lewis murdered somebody, got away with it, and everybody knew that he did it. He ratted on somebody to get out of those charges, and his numbers retired.
I will say that team, yeah, I agree, and that makes sense. But I will say, and Can I Live also in the comment section pointed out too, like the Familia Reyes thing was different ownership. It was different regime for the Mets. I think that the Ray Lewis situation obviously happening when it did. Times have just changed in terms of that. And there's still a lot of stuff going on that I understand around sports that are not necessarily up to par with what, meets society's norms and should, be in terms of who gets to stay on the field after they commit, a crime such as whatever it is versus not. And there's still some of that stuff happening, right? And we can all agree that teams definitely do go out and sign those type of guys even after those things happen. But I just think from a New York Mets perspective, I mean, Keith from Shane Sons tweeted out a video of David Stearns hopping up on a press conference talking about the Mets community and stressing the importance of his community and where he came from being a Mets fan, right? And so it would just make backward sort of sense to talk about community and putting the community first. And we all know the good that the Cohens do in the community, that the Mets organization does in the community. Pete Alonso is a prime example of giving back to the community as well. Like, that's what a lot of teams do stress, not only the Mets, but the Mets in particular as well. And it would just make sort of backward sense to me to go out. And like I said, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. The people in the comment section that want Bauer from a baseball perspective, more power to you. I think Bauer is still a very capable pitcher. And if a team does sign him, he's going to do great for said team. I don't have any doubts about that. But I'm saying is that whatever the Mets have preached in this new regime coming forward, it just would make opposite sense of Bauer coming and signing here for those reasons that come with him off the field, right? So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Bauer's a bad player. I just don't think it's feasible to go ahead and sign him. I think that you are right, though, Rob. Objectively, it would make all the ton of sense in the world, given where your rotation is, signing to a one-year deal. You have a guy you can flip for assets at the trade deadline. But I think there's so many factors involved here that go beyond what just you and I can sit here and talk about factually. Because listen, I'm not gonna lie to you. I listened to 15 minutes of his interview with the fan. I don't know much about Trevor Bauer and the whole situation that happened. I didn't ever really read up on it. All I know is that it wasn't good for a long time, and now he's starting to get back into it. But I don't know what happened there. All I know is that what the Mets have preached and stressed ever since David Stern specifically walked into those doors, it wouldn't make any sense in my mind. That's all I'm saying, and that's all. That's I'll rest my case on that.
Absolutely, and I understand that. But again, everybody in the chat and Justin said, if you want this guy that you're not a good human being, I'm telling you guys right now, you rooted for a team and a player at some point that might have had criminal, not just domestic violence, but other criminal aspects of life on the when they're not on the field or the court or the rink. You rooted for those teams. You're still a baseball fan. If you're really serious about people doing bad things and not a good person and are criminals, then why are you rooting for a team that is employing these players? Don't root for the teams. Let's act like we care enough as a sports fan, not as a person or as a moral human being on an everyday life that is not involved in sports. I'm not talking about going to work, working with a person, or living with a person that might be a criminal. I'm talking about a guy or a player that if he's on your team, because you know what? None of us should be sports fans then, because you know what? And this is the God honest truth, and I said it on my instant reaction live stream after the Bauer interview. I said this. None of us should be fans because we all think it's despicable what he did or what he might have done. Again, the rough sex was part of this stuff, right? We might not agree with it, right? And we know it's despicable. It's disgusting stuff, right? But we all rooted for players and teams that hired these players and that played on our team. And when they did something well for our team, we cheered. I'm not saying to have a beer with him. I'm not saying to ask for his autograph after the game or before the game or shake his hand if you see him in public. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, we all care about one thing: results as a sports fan, directly as a sports fan. I'm not talking about morals before or after the game. If Bauer becomes a Met and he strikes out Ronald Acuna Jr. in a big spot, I will cheer, and then I'll call him a complete asshole after the game. Because let's be honest, guys, there's a sports team and a sports player that has helped your team win a ball game, or win a hockey game, a basketball game, doesn't matter, that has done something criminal that he was convicted of, but we didn't care at that moment. We might care before or after, but in that moment, Chris, I'm telling you guys right now, if Bauer strikes out a player or a team in a big spot, it doesn't make us bad people that we're rooting for our teams to win in that spot. It doesn't make us a bad person. Right? I have a girlfriend, right? Some people have daughters. I have cousins that are women around that age, right? And I know it's despicable. But at the end of the day, why are you a fan of a team that has employed criminals? Because it's still going to happen. It happened previously. It's going to happen again. And it's going to happen in the future. Because at the end of the day, all anybody cares about in sports are results. And if you're still talented, teams are going to pick you up. And yes, at some point, one of our teams in any sport are going to pick up a player that has been convicted of something, are going to be a part of the team because he's still talented. And when he makes that tackle, makes the big shot in basketball, scores a goal, gets a big hit, strikes out the side in a big spot, at that moment, we're not going to care. And that's sad to say, but it's the God's honest truth, Chris.
So for me, before we move on to the DH talk, for me is that when I root for the Mets or anybody on the team, like I said, I understand completely where you're coming from, that teams in professional sports, that's going to happen with, and it still is happening. But for me, when I root, like, it gets hard for me to draw that. Like, the reason why I love Pete Alonso is because, I think that we can all say, right? Like, do we know him personally? No, we know none of these guys personally, but we can obviously say that he does great work within the community, and he has done so for a long time. So, like I said, that's where I started. Like, listen, I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys up here. Like, I don't want Trevor Bauer in the Mets. I'm sorry, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion, right? I don't want Trevor Bauer in the Mets. Like I said, is he still a capable pitcher? Absolutely, but combined with, like you said, he's an a-hole. You'll call him as such, even if he does well for the Mets and they brought him on because you're objective and you know what the case is. But that's one for me. That's one thing for me to just not bring him on in the first place. But the second place is Can I Live in the comment section is right. Like, this will be a major distraction to the team regardless, because that sort of negative energy does have an impact, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. So that's what I'll leave it at. That's what I'll leave it at. I think that a lot of people can make their own assumptions, and they could be a further discussion with them in the comment section. But for me, I'm out. I don't think it's going to happen anyways. So I'd rather talk about the guys that we do think is feasible to bring along, and that is a DH that we have on our screen.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming by the power versus average at DH, you're talking about Justin Turner versus JD Martinez, or maybe Jorge Soler.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I think, but you know my stance on this already. Yeah. I think if I had to choose one person to DH given the Mets' situation, I think it would be Justin Turner. I think he's the perfect fit. And I really, truly, like I said, and this is taken into consideration that Jorge Soler, his asking price isn't going to come down. I know recent reports have said that maybe his asking price does come down. But let's say that it doesn't. The whole Justin Turner versus JD Martinez conversation and that debate has been brought to fruition multiple times. I'm taking Justin Turner. He's a versatile hitter. I love the way he hits the opposite way. He's been doing this for quite some time. 278 with 23 home runs last season. That certainly plays. I don't think JD Martinez is going to sniff 30 home runs this coming season.
I agree.
Right? He can hit 25, and that'd be awesome for him. Great. I don't think he's hitting 30. I don't think he's hitting 30 plus like he did with the Dodgers. So I like Justin Turner. I like that you can sign him for either 1 or 2 years and still be okay, because if he gets the bulk work as DH in 2024, becomes a bench bat in 2025, we can live with that. We can live with that. On the other hand, will I complain if we sign a Jorge Soler to back up Pete Alonso in that fifth spot? No, absolutely not. Jorge Soler is a once-in-a-lifetime type of bat in terms of the power aspect. Is he going to play anywhere in the field at any point? No. He's not a good outfielder. For me, it comes down to JD Martinez. Obviously, like, am I going to cry if the Mets sign JD Martinez? No, I'm not. He's coming off a great season. Well, he hit 271, 33 bombs for the Dodgers. But the sample size is a problem too. Only 113 games last season. I'm not sure if that was just sort of a load management type situation or if he came down with an injury. We know the injury history with him. But what's stopping him from commanding a 3-year deal, given he's 35 going on 36 and just had one of the better seasons of his career? I think that's also sort of a counterpoint that we have to make here. So I like Justin Turner for the Mets. If I had to choose a DH, that's the most feasible, the most reasonable, and the best fit for the New York Mets going into 2024, I would say it's Justin Turner.
Yeah,
Matt,
I agree.
Shout out Matt. Shout out Ibby in the chat.
Yeah, Ibby's in the chat.
JT.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ibby, what's up? And yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think Justin Turner is perfect for this team. And I've said this before. Jorge Soler and JD Martinez, if you look at their stats, and a lot of their production comes from home runs. Now Jorge Soler is a different story. I think he would still be a big home run guy. But I don't know if the Mets are going to go 3 years, maybe 2 years. And again, I'm a little surprised that I think Soler's having a hard time getting a 3-year deal, because I think that's the reason why he hasn't signed yet. And I think that's an interesting thing to look at, Chris, when it comes to that. Because if he was able to get a 3-year deal somewhere, he would have probably signed already. I think he's having a hard time doing that. So I'm thinking that if the Mets want Soler, I think they can get him on a 2-year deal, because I think a 3-year deal would have happened already for Soler. But because I think all things equal, I think Soler is probably the best bet for this team, considering what they need in this lineup, not defensively, even though Jorge Soler is nowhere near the David Stearns type of guy. That's wrong, because David Stearns like power and defense. Soler provides the power, not the defense. But JD Martinez and Jorge Soler, if they don't hit home runs, they're not very productive run production-wise, in my opinion. Because go back a couple of years ago, and JD Martinez hit 16 home runs with 62 RBIs. If he does that, he's Daniel Vogelback. because he didn't hit a lot of home runs. The run production wasn't there. Those 30 home runs got him to that 100 RBI total. And Justin Turner doesn't need home runs to be a run production. Look what he did. He hit, 23 home runs last year? And he hit 96 RBIs. That tells me that he put the bat on the ball in run production spots. When guys are in scoring position, he got that run home despite hitting a home run. He hit 96 RBI. He got 96 RBIs by not just hitting home runs. I'm more comfortable with Justin Turner because Justin Turner might be old, but he is looking to hit home runs. JD Martinez and Jorge Soler is. Justin Turner can bat 300. He's a guy that puts the bat on the ball. He doesn't strike out a lot. Martinez does, and Soler strike out a lot. Justin Turner doesn't. I like Justin Turner more. Not only does that he can provide that run production without being hitting home runs, but if third base is an issue, Justin Turner can fill that spot. Not every day, but to make sure you get somebody that can actually be productive offensively and defensively. If Beatty and Vientos aren't that guy early on, Justin Turner could be that guy. And that's why I like Justin Turner more. It makes the most sense when you look at what Stearns is doing. Stearns like versatility. JD Martinez and Jorge Soler are not versatile. Soler is not a good outfielder. So I don't see them using Soler in the outfield, especially after the Bader sign it. So Soler would be a predominantly DH. JD Martinez is not a good fielder. He might play once or twice in a pickle in the field, but he's not playing on the field. So if these guys don't hit, they're useless on the bench, just like Vogelback was. And I don't want another guy that is just a DH. And if he doesn't hit, he's taking up a roster spot because he can't do anything else. Justin Turner, I know if he's not hitting, he could play third base. He could play first base to give a couple of, a day off for Alonso. Or if Beatty and Vientos struggle, you can put him at third base. And I can say, all right, I know he's a good defender. I know he's a professional. I can put him at third base, Chris. And I think that's why me and you agree on the Justin Turner aspect. Will we hate any other signings? If it's Turner, Soler, or Martinez? Absolutely not. I would be happy with either of them. But the best player for this Mets team is Justin Turner, in my opinion, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are also discounting the fact that Justin Turner can hit you 25 plus bombs at any given season as well. Like, just because he hit 23 this past season, I mean, Ibby's saying in the chat here, according to Zavant, if Justin Turner played at Citi Field this past season, he'd have 29 home runs on the season, not just a 23. Now, I know that's also just like, oh, projections are projections. But like I said, the power aspect of Justin Turner's game, he is so versatile that people – they the age, a lot of people forget about that because of the age, but also he's just such a versatile hitter, gap to gap type hitter that can hit for high average. We've seen him hit damn near 300s. Obviously took a little bit of a dip at 278 this past season, but he will give you 25 plus home runs in any given season as well, which also plays perfectly behind Pete Alonso. Like, honestly, Justin Turner behind Pete Alonso is not any less scary than JD Martinez behind Pete Alonso. Let's not get it twisted. Let's not get it twisted. I completely believe that. That's my thoughts and opinions, but I firmly do believe that. And it might even be scarier because I'm not saying JD Martinez can't hit the ball the other way, but Justin Turner is one of the best to do it in terms of hitting the ball the other way, which I love. And I wish Pete Alonso can do that on a 162 game basis because he'd be hitting 300 plus with 50 home runs consistently, and nobody would be up here in the comment section or anywhere else on Twitter talking about his 217, because when he goes into those slumps like we saw when he was batting 240, 250 and then went down to the 220s and below, he started pulling off everything, starting to pull every single pitch. So like I said, Justin Turner, complete hitter, knows how to take the pitch where it's thrown, whether it's the right center field gap or the left center field gap, knows how to put the ball over the fence. Give me Justin Turner. The age is not a concern to me, right? Like you said, in an off day for Brett Beatty, if Brett Beatty needs a day off, Justin Turner can go out there and play third base. If Pete Alonso needs a day off, maybe he goes to DH. Justin Turner can go play you a first base. If by any stretch of the imagination, the Mets are having issues at second base, maybe Jeff McNeil goes down, Justin Turner, guess what? Knows how to play second base. So he's very versatile on the field as well, but that's not where the bulk load of work I'm looking for him to contribute in the 2024 season if he's signed with the New York Mets. Yep. I need that bat in the lineup. It plays well.
Correct. And AB has a great stat here that Baseball Savant, he would have hit 29 home runs at Citi Field. And you know why he would hit 29 home runs at Citi Field? Because he hit a lot of balls to right center. And we know in Boston, right center is cavernous, right? We know that little center field and right center field, quirky outfield that is, what is it, 412, 415? It's 420, whatever the heck it is. He hits a lot of balls to right center. And he probably hit a lot of balls that were, probably home runs in a lot of other ballparks and not at Fenway. So, you know what? I'm not even saying if he hits 29 home runs, this guy's gonna probably have over 100 RBIs. But say if he hits 16 home runs, I know Martinez with 16 home runs is not going to give you 80 plus RBIs. He's not. And Soler, the same thing. If they don't hit home runs, there's no run production there at all because they strike out too much. They're not a big average guy, even though Martinez has been hitting for average for the most part. But I don't see him not hitting home runs and being productive RBI-wise. Justin Turner can hit 16 home runs next year. Say if he hits 15 home runs. I can see him still hitting 80 to 85 RBIs just based on his average, batting 280, 290, because that's what Justin Turner is. Justin Turner is not going up there at any moment trying to hit a home run. Now, if he gets a good piece of that ball, it's over the fence. But I want Justin Turner because of the versatility and because he can hit 15 home runs for us and still be an 80-plus RBI guy, which behind Pete Alonso is a huge upgrade in production. And that just only brings in a Nimmo, brings in a Lindor, and guys in front of him as well. If you got 3 guys instead of 2 guys that hit 85 to 100 RBIs in your 3, 4, 5 spot in Lindor, Alonso, and Turner, guess what? The Martes, the Nimmos are going to be scoring a hell of a lot more. They're going to have a lot of runs scored this year with those 3 guys, Chris. So, in my opinion, Turner's the guy, but any one of those 3, I'm okay with for sure.
Yeah, and the lineup, like if you add a Justin Turner, if you get a little bit of a resurgence from Starling Marte, if you get anything more than what Brett Beatty produced last season at third base, you're looking at a night and day difference in the lineup from 2023 to 2024. And I think a lot of people are discounting that. Now, those are 2 huge ifs that I pointed out, but I think that we should be expecting for what he's getting paid, right? And I hate to bring the contracts in, but Starling Marte, we should be expecting more than we got. Brett Beatty, it's almost hard for him to do worse than last season. So we can only go up, you'd assume, for Brett Beatty.
Marte
right?
too.
And Marte too, exactly. It's the same situation. You get a second-year Alvarez, right? I know that he went on a little bit of a skid there. His average dropped immensely toward the end of the season, but you get a year 2 Alvarez. This lineup, you add a Justin Turner, a complete hitter, it's not looking too bad. And also Michael in the chat too here saying, we haven't talked about this name in a while, and he's still on the market. Rhys Hoskins.
I wanted him about a month ago. I had a video about him. I'll tell you right now, if you give me Rhys Hoskins, I'm gonna tell you right now, that's probably better than all of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I take Hoskins in a minute, in a heartbeat. Yep. Absolutely, because I think that coming off the injury, I think he really is like, unless some team is willing to give him like 2 or 3 years, right? Which
I doubt it.
I doubt it, but it could. I mean, it's feasible. I would understand it. Maybe with an opt-out somewhere mixed in between. A 1-year deal, prove-it-year deal with the New York Mets for Rhys Hoskins, that's like music to my ears. That is money. So, yeah, I agree. Like, if Hoskins... What was that?
Do you think that will piss off Alonso?
No, because coming off of a knee injury like that, I don't think Rhys Hoskins is any way, shape, or form going to be taking the majority of reps from Pete at first base anyways. But you talking about the optics of like the long-term plan? Correct. Is that what you're saying? It could. That's why we haven't talked about him in so long, right? Like we haven't talked about him because like presumably that could be a slap in the face and that could impact Pete Alonso contract negotiations. And do you really want that to happen? But that's why we're talking about strictly ball here. If we talk strictly ball here, like give us Rhys Hoskins, you know what I mean? Right behind Pete Alonso. Yeah. But I digress.
Yeah. I would take Hoskins over all 3 of those guys because honestly, you could put Alonso at DH a little bit more, where he's been very productive. Yeah, I know we don't like it, but he's been very productive at DH. You don't have to play Alonso every single day at first base. Not saying Alonso's, a butcher at first base. He's gotten a lot better. And Rhys Hoskins is probably not better defensively than Alonso at this point, but it gets Alonso off his feet for people that worry about him breaking down earlier, in the next 4 or 5 years. You spill him twice a week and just make him a DH. You might save a year of production, a really good production, and a guy that might, he has a body type of breaking down in 4 or 5 years. Everybody's saying that, even people that are in the know, people that, watch this stuff and do this every day, see it as Alonso being a guy that could be breaking down body-wise in 4 to 5 years. And if that's the case, you want to get him off his feet a little bit defensively. Not saying that Rhys Hoskins is better at first base. He's not defensively, but you want to get him off his feet a little bit, just like the Mets are doing with Nimmo, as we talk about the next topic in Harrison Bader. Is the Harrison Bader move to move Nimmo out of center field a lot more or permanently? In this case, is Bader going to be the left fielder? Is Bader going to be the center fielder and Nimmo's going to be the left fielder? Because the Mets, we talked about left field. We talked about it about a week ago. Nobody had a bright idea for left field at all. We were very confused on left field. We have no idea where the Mets are going to go. Do the Mets see Nimmo long term or even this year as the everyday left fielder? What do you think Bader's role is for this team, Chris?
I think it's going to be in center field when he's out there. Honestly, I've said it on my Twitter account. I'll say it here. If the Mets take the other stance and prefer Nimmo to be the center fielder over Bader, even when Bader plays, more power to them. I don't care who plays center, but I do think the Mets have long-term plans here in terms of preserving Brandon Nimmo's health in order to get the most out of him in that 8-year, $162 million contract. Now listen, I said this guy is my favorite prospect, and I firmly believe it. I'm going to go on record here, January 7th, 2024. I'm going to go on record. Drew Gilbert will be the starting center fielder for the New York Mets. If not, at some point in 2024, he will be the starting center fielder come opening day 2025 for the New York Mets. Yep. 100%. I will go on record.
You saw it later in the year last year in August and September. They had every aspect they could to bring Nimmo to left field. They did it in August and September because they are very concerned. Because I don't believe the Mets wanted to give Nimmo that big contract. I think they wanted Nimmo so badly that they had to do better than the offer that was on the table for the Colorado Rockies in 7 years. They had to go a little bit higher or at least match. And I think they got worried, so they blew Nimmo away with an offer because they wanted him and they didn't have a choice. But here we go again. Nimmo is a risk injury-wise. If you don't believe that, you haven't watched his career. Now, he was healthy last year, and the last 2 seasons, he was predominantly healthy. He played excellent, and he played almost every day. But do we really think in his career going forward, he's going to remain healthy as a hard-nosed player that he is defensively now, where he's diving for balls, he's going back, running against the wall? Do we really think that Nimmo is going to stay healthy for the next couple of years? Because that's why the Mets are concerned. That's the reason why they signed Bader. That's the reason why they see Gilbert as probably the center fielder of the future. Nimmo is going to play left field a hell of a lot more than people probably want who are obsessed and in love with Nimmo. Everybody knows I'm not the biggest fan of Nimmo. I don't think Nimmo is a great center fielder. Has he gotten better? Yes. Because analytics told him where to play, and his biggest problem was coming in on balls. Going back on balls was his huge issue early on, in the last couple of seasons prior to 2022. His problem was going back on balls. So the Mets analytically figured out, hey, play deeper. You can get to those balls in the gaps. You can get the balls over your head. That's why he's become a better defensive player. Not because of pure skill. I think it's because of the analytics, not because of Nimmo's skill. I think Nimmo would be a great corner outfielder because that's what he always was and still is. Now, with that aspect, if you notice, a lot of balls that are hit, not on the nose and are hitting in front of him are dropping more because he's playing so deep. Again, that's not a saying that if Nimmo's our center fielder and the Mets believe he could be our center fielder for the next 4 years, am I going to complain? Absolutely not. We could do a lot worse than Brandon Nimmo. But when you got Bader and you got Gilbert in this organization, they're setting up Nimmo to be a left fielder starting this season. 100%. There's no reason why to sign Bader to make him a left fielder. That is stupid because you're not using his best talent, which is defense. It doesn't make sense. And I do think Bader's going to play a lot of center field. You're going to see Nimmo in left field, and that's why I think the Mets haven't really got a left fielder because I think they believe Nimmo's going to be the left fielder more often than not, and Bader's going to be playing a lot of center field. Now, help with Bader is the other option as well. If the Mets can keep Bader healthy, he's going to be very productive for us on the field and probably with the bat, Chris.
That is really the main issue with the Mets moving forward in the outfield, right? You have Starling Marte's injury issues, Bader's injury issues, and Nimmo's injury issues. And a lot of people saying, well, you already had Tyrone Taylor. Why go sign Harrison Bader? I really do think the Mets are going to utilize a platoon type of merry-go-round in the outfield to keep these guys' legs as fresh. And Bader's no exception to that. His sample size and games played hasn't been great in his career. So you have to. Tyrone Taylor is going to be getting a lot of reps. DJ Stewart might be getting a lot more reps than we had originally thought. Bader's going to get a lot of reps if he stays healthy. Nimmo and Marte also a lot of reps, but I do agree with you. Like Drew Gilbert is the future, and I know we talk about prospects that are untouchable versus not untouchable, right? And I have very few untouchable prospects, but I truly believe with the way that the Mets outfield is shaking out and every sign that they're giving us, going back to the latter half of 2023, moving into this offseason, Nimmo, like you said, is going to be that left fielder. And Drew Gilbert, we're setting ourselves up perfectly for this bridge year to bring in Drew Gilbert when they deem him ready. And guess what? If I had to guess right now, this is a pure guess. I don't think Drew Gilbert's going to make it to AAA. I think he's going straight from AA to the major leagues.
I agree.
Whenever that may be. I know he only had 35 games under his belt in AA for the Mets when he came over from the Houston Astros organization. But I truly do believe that. And I think that he's going to be probably the most ready of any major or any minor leaguer right now. That includes Jet Williams. That includes Luis Angel Acuna. I think Drew Gilbert is going to be that guy. Like I said, whether it's 2024, 2025 is easy call for me. Starting center fielder opening day. But the question is do they make that, say Bader goes down at any point or Nimmo maybe goes down for an extended period of time in 2024? If Drew Gilbert's on the cusp of being ready, do they pull the trigger on that in a bridge type season? That's a huge sort of situation that we have to get ourselves ready for. So food for thought for the chat.
Yeah, and again, people are like, why sign Bader when you have Tyrone Taylor? Because the Mets see Bader. Remember, Bader has started in his career a lot. Tyrone Taylor was basically a bench guy. He was a guy that came off the bench in a power spot, and a guy who came in late in games. He played a lot of games, but he was a platoon guy. He was never technically a starter every day with the Brewers. So Bader has been a starter with St. Louis. The Yankees did start him in center field in 2022 when they got him. He was supposed to be the starting center fielder for the Yankees. So I do believe that Bader is going to play a lot of games. He played, I think, 92 games last year, if I'm not mistaken. If Bader plays 100 games for the Mets, he's going to start a lot of them in center field. Nimmo is a corner outfield. His best overall as a player is a corner outfield position. Nimmo has no arm. Nimmo has not thrown out, I think he's thrown out the most in his career, 3 guys at home plate. That's a big deal, right? We need an arm in center field. Bader has that. Tyrone Taylor has that, if you're going to use him in center field. Nimmo fits well in left field because he's a corner outfield. Just to be honest with yourself, he's a perfect left fielder because of the fact he has no arm and he can patrol left field like a center fielder, even though he's not a great center fielder. And I see it just like that. I think our better defensive team is Nimmo in left field, Bader, Tyrone Taylor in center, and Marte in right. Because if Marte stays healthy for the most part, and all indications are Marte is healthy, Marte is playing very well in the Dominican League right now. He's playing the field. He's hitting the ball because it's never talent with Marte. Speaking of Marte, really quick about the outfield, Marte is still a player. If he's healthy, he's going to hit. He's hit even when he's played 100 games in his career. When he was injured with the Marlins, whatever, whoever else he played for, he's hit when he's played. It's just a matter of keeping him on the field. If Marte plays 120 games, which the Mets are going to take care of Marte health-wise, they're not going to play him every day. Maybe 4 or 5 days a week. Give him off days every now and then. If Marte plays and you keep him, if you can give Marte 120 games and keep him healthy for 120 games, he's going to bat 300 because that's what he's done in his career. And he's going to be productive for this team. So, with that said, the one thing that a lot of people don't talk about enough is bullpen, Chris, as we finish up this stream. And I know we're going a little bit further, but I think it's important to realize that there's a lot of talk, a lot of talking points with this team because this roster is not done. With the bullpen, it's seeming like bullpen's going to take until late January to figure out for not just the Mets, but for a lot of teams, because there's still a lot of guys on the market, a premium for teams to get. Bullpen wise, where are we going? Because we signed a lot of bullpen arms already. Are the Mets going to sign an established arm? Like, you brought up a Stevenson. You brought up, I brought up, guys, are they going to bring back Robertson? What are they going to do bullpen wise, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they need that solidified guy because I understand that Jorge Lopez's upside is what it is in terms of that all-star season he had in Baltimore, but he hasn't been the same since. So I really do think that the Mets need that lockdown eighth inning guy for Edwin Diaz, right? And listen, Edwin Diaz is coming off of an injury. Those stretches of 5-out saves, 4-out saves, Edwin Diaz was coming in 2022 and getting the New York Mets and saving their asses is not something we're going to see a heavy dose of in 2024 coming off the injury. So they really need to prioritize a lockdown type of guy in the eighth inning. Now, there's a wide range of eighth inning lockdown guys that you can go out there that are still on the market. And bullpen is one of the slowest moving markets there is this offseason. So that's why we haven't heard much traction in terms of that eighth inning guy. We've seen all the depth signings that the New York Mets have made in terms of the early bullpen additions, guys on the two-way contracts like your Austin Adamses and Kyle Cricks, etc. We've seen 10 to 12 of those already happen. That's fine and dandy. That's like throwing darts on the wall and hoping something hits a bullseye when you have those gems of findings in the early bullpen. What we want to know is who's going to be that lockdown eighth inning guy that shuts the bottom of the order out of a Philadelphia Phillies team or maybe a Braves team if they somehow find their way in terms of a lead, right, at the beginning of the ball game. Who's going to come in and shut that part of the lineup down before Edwin Diaz goes out there and does his thing? Who's it going to be? Now, you have a wide range of guys on the market right now, and with wide range of talent comes wide range of salaries. You have your Ryan Staneks, right? You have your David Robertsons, who will be a little bit cheaper given the age by default. Or you can go and splurge a little bit. Maybe a guy like Hector Neris, who I've wanted from the start of this offseason. Now, I know Meezy's guy in the chat here, he loves Jordan Hicks. I personally can't see them going after Jordan Hicks because I think he's going to land a multi-year deal given his age and the type of season he had last season. So I don't think Jordan Hicks. Yeah.
He wants to be a closer.
Yeah, and he wants to be a closer predominantly, exactly. So I don't think that the Mets are in on him. Robert Stevenson is another guy, right? If you have a Jorge Lopez in your seventh inning, a Robert Stevenson could be that eighth inning guy for you. So no, MEZ, Hector Neris does not stink. I know that everyone's has this preconceived notion of Hector Neris in his Philadelphia Phillies days. Like, he has a career resurgence in Houston, like many pitchers do. And I think that he could bring great things for the New York Mets in 2024 on a two-year deal. A lot of people, like, I think, who is it? Stevie Mack said Wandy Peralta. That could be a cheaper of an option. I truly do believe a nice little lefty as well to go along with Brooks Raley in the pen. Now, like I said, there's a lot of different ways the Mets can go about this, but rest assured, they do need that 8th inning guy. The Mets cannot forego that. I know a lot of people are talking about when I was tweeting earlier today what the next move is for the New York Mets after the Sean Manaea signing is looking for that 8th inning guy. A lot of people saying, well, they already have Jorge Lopez. Listen, if the Mets want to win ball games, right? Jorge Lopez and taking a chance on him being that shutdown guy in the 8th inning, it's not something you can do. If I had to draw this bullpen out, and Daniel, as much as I love Josh Hader on the Mets to be a setup man, it's not going to happen, my man. I'm sorry. You can forget about that. Brooks Raley for the 6th. Or no, let's flip-flop it. Jorge Lopez for the 6th. Brooks Raley for the 7th. You're signing whoever you sign in this free agent class for the 8th. And Edwin Diaz coming in for the 9th. That is a nice little 6 through 9 right there in terms of the innings pitched for the bullpen.
Yep.
So, like I said, they need that shutdown guy, especially to alleviate pressure off of Edwin Diaz. It needs to happen. And all those names I just mentioned, Neris, Stevenson, Robertson, Stanek, I see Suter flying in there. I don't know if Suter's that shutdown guy in the 8th inning. I don't know if he's that shutdown guy. I don't know. Yes, Ibby. Thank you. I know. I caught myself there. 9. Yes. But yeah, you get my drift. There's tiers of classes in this free agent class, but honestly, I'd be fine with either one of them. It just depends on what type of AAV these guys are looking for. But the main thing is that they need to want to be the setup guy, right? To differentiate your Hickses and your Haders from your Stevensons and your Robertsons and your Narises, right? And like I said, it needs to be a short-term deal because bullpens, you're not handing out a 3 to 4 year contract in the bullpen, especially with the way the Mets are going right now. Yeah, you don't do it. So
and again, there is nobody in baseball that's going to give $200 million contracts for bullpen arms. It's just not happening. So Hader's not happening. I'm not saying Hicks is getting $100 million, but Hicks sees himself as a closer, and I think a lot of teams see him as a closer. So it's not happening with the Mets because he's probably going to get about 3 years, a 3-year deal, because that's what I've seen being reported on teams that are looking at Jordan Hicks are looking at 3 years. And that's why I don't think the Mets are going to do that. If I tell you, and I do think, and I agree with CM that says we need another lefty, 100%. We need 2 lefties. You can't have 1 lefty in your bullpen when you got to deal with Schwarber, Harper, Olsen, Albies. You can't have 1 lefty in your bullpen because you need multiple lefties for just those 2 teams alone in your division. If I say Matt Moore, David Robertson, are you happy with that? Those 2 guys? Because Robertson would probably be your 8th guy, or even more.
If those 2, if those are 2 guys, I'm happy. Sorry to cut you off. I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's right. I cut you off the whole time already. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Loop. I know people are talking about Loop. I would take Aaron Loop back. I think Aaron Loop thrived in New York. I think he's a guy that needs New York because you saw what happened when he went to the Angels. It seemed like he was a lost puppy. Like, I think he needs the scrutiny. He needs the criticism. He needs the constant eyes on him. He needs that Busch beer after a game. He needs that. He's that guy. He's that guy that when he has that Busch beer post game, he wants people talking about him. Listen, if you give me Aaron Loop and David Robertson, listen, this 7, 8, and 9 bullpen is pretty damn good. And then you can play around with your 5, 6 guys that come out of the bullpen, Lopez and Cricks and those guys and the Scrubs and anybody that is going to make the team in the bullpen, and including Drew Smith, as nobody wants to hear his name. But the Mets are giving Drew Smith one last chance because the arm is there. We talk about Velo.
Lord help us all, but Lord help us.
Velo is an issue with the bullpen. They had nobody that had thrown over 90. I think one guy thrown over 96, 97. I was out of Vino and Drew Smith every now and then. But all the guys, if you look at the guys that they acquired, all those bulk guys, those depth guys, are guys that have high velo and nasty sliders. So that's what he's doing. And again, bullpen is a crapshoot. I don't know what bullpen that has big names in it that were good. And if you look again, I go back to the Brewers and the Yankees. Nobody can name me 3 pitchers in their bullpen right now. Yet they were number 1 and number 2 in bullpen ERA because they were no names for the most part. And I'm not talking about Williams, the closer, for the Brewers. Other than that, nobody can name bullpen arms for the Brewers or the Yankees. Now, you might be able to name a couple of Yankees because you see them more often if you're in the New York area, but these are not known names. Somebody brought up Wandy Peralta. Wandy Peralta was, a crap heap guy that Cashman got for basically nothing because that's the way it is. And bullpens aren't about names except for a closer. The closer, you want a name guy. You want a big name guy, right? The Mets have that in Diaz. Now, we'll see what he's going to be. Is he going to be as good as he was in 22? He don't have to be. To be honest with you, if he's, top 3, top 4 closer in baseball and not top 1, guess what? You're probably going to have a better year. People don't talk about that enough. Not having Diaz last year probably cost us 5 games at the very least. That puts us back at 500 at the very least. I think Diaz's WAR was around a 4 or a 5. That cost us 4 or 5 games, and that was with Robertson being elite. But the Mets didn't get Robertson to have him close. They had him to be the setup man for Diaz. If the Mets get a guy in the 8th inning that is going to be a really good setup man, if it's Moore, if it's Robertson, that is only going to make us better because all you need from our pitchers are 5 or 6 innings, and then you go with our bullpen. The problem was our starters couldn't get to the 5th inning or the 6th inning. That was a problem. They were giving up 5 or 6 runs a game. Not only did you have to make your offense come back, you had to have your bullpen that you really didn't trust, except for Robertson, come in and hold down the fort so your offense can come back. Now, if you have a bullpen where you can trust your 7th, 8th, and 9th guy, because I think Rarely can be your 7th inning guy, no problem. I think he'll be fine having his 3.5 ERA. But what about if it's Robertson as your 8th inning guy? I'm okay with, because he can close every now and then, giving Diaz a day off coming off of that knee injury. So, Chris, last question. If the Mets are going to get 2 more bullpen arms, who do you want them to be?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah,
That's a loaded question. Let's go 1 lefty, 1 righty, because I think we both agree that we need another lefty, right? And then presumably a righty. So the lefty won't be your 8th inning guy, although he could be, but presumably not. In an ideal scenario, perfect scenario, I take maybe a Peralta and a Stevenson, but I don't think the Mets are going to go all in like that for the bullpen. So if David Robertson, knowing what David Robertson did when the Mets let him go, if he's up for a reunion and he liked New York as good as his stats were there in the first half of the season before they plummeted with Miami, I'd probably take a Wandy and a David Robertson. I'd take that. And I think that fits the Mets perfectly for this offseason. You already know I'd love to have a Hector Neris on this team. MEZ, you can go after me all you want. I understand where you're coming from. I like a Hector Neris for the 8th inning. I like a Matt Moore, like you said, or a Suter. But I'd like to see David Robertson in that 8th inning setup role for Edwin Diaz. Robertson was 1 year, $10 million last season when he signed in the offseason. Now, if you can get him for a little cheaper than that $10 million, I think that plays really well. I'm not sure if the Mets are going to play money. How much do you think you think he's going to make more or less than that?
Because he sucked with the Marlins, I think he's going to get less than that. I mean, I don't think he wants to go anywhere. Like, I think he was depressed in Miami. I don't think he wanted to leave. And he said it. He didn't want to leave. So I think that's the biggest reason why I think he struggled. I think just, as a human being, I think he was just like, shit, I'm pissed off. If you can get him for under $10 million, I take him back in a heartbeat. Wandy Peralta, I like. And he's a hard-throwing lefty that I think can complement Raley with the soft-throwing lefty. Would be perfect. And you said Peralta and Robertson. That's what you said?
Yeah, that was gonna be my 2 if I had to draw
I'd
it
be
up.
okay with that. I would be okay with that. I think it needs to be give me Matt Moore or Peralta or even Aaron Loop as a lefty,
Sure.
and Robinson or another 8th inning guy that I can trust. I think Robinson's going to be a Met. I think his first conversation is probably going to be with the Mets, like a legit conversation. I think he wants to come back to New York. If you get Robinson, Matt Moore, or Peralta, I think this Mets setup team bullpen is probably better. I think you could trust that bullpen more than the starting rotation, to be honest. And that's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing, because you know what? Look at teams bullpen where their starting pitching wasn't very good. And I go back to the Phillies. The Phillies' best arm, and I talked about this. Wheeler was their ace. He had a 3.61 ERA. Yet the Phillies had a really good bullpen, and that really helped them throughout the season and in the playoffs. Their pitching wasn't very good in the postseason, starting pitching wise. It was their bullpen that shut down lineups. And again, can you name a lot of those guys in the bullpen? Not really, right? Not really.
Nope.
And you know who is their closer? Who is their closer, Chris, for the Phillies?
Ooh, the Brewers?
No, the Phillies.
What was it? I know he was serving as part-time closer, Sir Anthony Dominguez, but I don't know who filled in
He
after
has the
him.
ugly beard. He pitches like this.
Oh, Kimbrel. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
last legs of his career.
Kimbrel, who wasn't even good a couple of years ago, yet he was very good for them. And their bullpen, besides Sir Anthony Dominguez, and their bullpen was so much better than their rotation that it saved their rotation in many games. If you go look, I looked at it the other day because I was curious. Because I was like, how are the Phillies a 90-win ball club, yet their rotation wasn't very good? Their best pitcher was a 3.6 ERA, and people say that you need a really good starting rotation. You don't. You need a solid rotation. And the reason why the Phillies were good was not because their starting rotation was very good, was because their pitchers, their starting rotation, pitched every 5th day. Consistency in the rotation matters overall than quality. You need one starter that can give you a start every time when you go out and say, we're going to win that ball game. Everybody else, you just need quality starts from 5 innings, 2 or 3 runs. You're going to win a lot of those games. If you score 4 to 5 runs per ball game, which the Mets basically did last year, you're going to win a lot of those ball games if you can give up 3 runs or less. It's just that simple. Mathematically, that's just the way it is. If the Mets have a solid bullpen and a rotation that can go out there every 5th day and give you quality starts with Kodai Sengu giving you ace type stuff, or at least what he showed you last year, there's no reason why you can't be a plus 500 team. And I'm not saying a 90 win team, but if you win 85 or 86 games, there's a pretty good chance the Mets can make the playoffs.
And since you brought the Phillies bullpen in, just to make my point, I mean, how many fireballs do they have out of that bullpen? Sir Anthony throws close to 100. Alvarado throws close to 100. Even Gregory Soto, who didn't have a good season, I'd say, but he throws close to 100 as well. So you need those explosive type pitchers, which is what the Mets were missing at Edwin Diaz in 2023. Get him back, maybe add one more fireballer, and you're ready to go. Like I said, the bullpen, it depends on what the Mets do starting pitching wise, because if there's any way to push Joey Lucchesi out of that starting rotation into a long reliever type role, given how the roster is shaking out in terms of the starting pitching depth, I'd love to see Joey Lucchesi in a Trevor Williams type long relief role. Because let's face it, in 2024, we're going to be watching at some point in the season, more often than not, a starting pitcher who probably struggles to make it out of the 4th inning. And we're going to need extended bullpen help. And Trevor Williams thrived in that role for the New York Mets. And I think that Joey Lucchesi could do the same. I wouldn't be as comfortable with Joey Lucchesi coming out for a 1-inning type appearance out of the bullpen. But if he comes out for like a shortened start, maybe in the 3rd or 4th inning in long relief coming out of the bullpen, that would be perfect. But the thing is that I'm not quite sure the Mets are going to go out and do what it takes to be able to push Joey Lucchesi outside of the rotation. With the way that it's shaking out right now, you need him in the rotation. So I think this all circles back to the Mets signing Manaea, and let's see if they go after a guy in the trade block or the free agency, because these two things go hand in hand. They push,
Yes.
like, you can go and push a starter into the bullpen to make it that much stronger. And these two feed off of each other. Obviously, that's the obvious. But I think a lot of people are forgetting about that over the course of this discussion. So yeah, like I said, the Mets still have work to do. Well, I know we haven't wrapped up summary thoughts or whatnot, so I'm just going to do it here. The Mets have a lot of work to do still. 2024 roster is not complete. The 40-man is almost to max capacity if it's not already at max capacity, but there's going to be corresponding moves to free up some roster space. I don't think it's feasible to go into 2024 with Vientos as your DH if the plan is to win ball games. If the plan is to evaluate talent, then maybe you go in with Vientos as your DH. But I don't think that's what the Mets are going to do. DH is on the horizon. Bullpen help is going to be on the horizon. And we'll see which side of the reports, the rumor mills, are going to be accurate in terms of, are the Mets done adding to their starting rotation or not? And I think that will solve. If we see a pitcher sooner than later, a starting pitcher sooner than later, then that would solve a lot of other issues for the New York Mets by default. So like I said, this is a great stream. All of our topics here, we did a great job in covering, because I said it when Bader signed that it was just the tip of the iceberg for the New York Mets, and there's going to be a flurry of corresponding moves coming after that. And Sean Manaea came not too soon or not too long after that. And I truly do think that we're going to continue to see moves, maybe not on as grand of a scale that Mets fans have wanted this whole offseason, but this roster still needs some work for 2024, regardless of what the situation, what the goal is here. So let's be patient.
I think that if the Mets do go after, if it's true that the Mets are still looking for starting pitching, and they're looking at like a solid number 2 starting pitcher, whoever that is, Monty, Cease, Bieber, Burns, whoever. If they're doing that, then you really know that a Hauser or a Lucchesi or a McGill, 2 of those guys are going to be in the bullpen as a long man, as a 6th inning guy, 5th inning guy if the pitcher goes short. And I don't know if anybody's noticed that in the chat, or you, Chris. Yes, I did it on purpose. It says Mets stove hot. I did that on purpose on the bottom. I don't know if anybody noticed that.
I didn't even notice it.
I was hoping somebody brought it up. I don't know if somebody brought it up in the chat, but I did that on purpose because we made 2 signings in like a couple of days. Like that's like burning hot. Like whoop, like let's go. So yes, that was on purpose. I can read English. I promise. I have elementary writing. I promise you guys. It was on purpose. Chris, I agree with you. The next arm the Mets sign, if it's a bullpen arm, then they're going with this rotation. And is it going to be a Lucchesi? Lucchesi, Hauser, most likely are going to be the 5th starter, one of those 2 guys. I doubt McGill is going to be that guy. I think the 5th star, McGill is probably going to be a long man in the bullpen if that's the case. But right now, it's going to be either Lucchesi or Hauser as your 5th starter. But the next move is going to be important. If the Mets make another solid move, a Chris Bassett type of trade, or again, Cease, Burns, Bieber, whoever, that's like a number 2 or a number 3, then they're probably only going to get one more arm in the bullpen in the free agent market, because 2 guys are going to have to go in that rotation in a Hauser or Lucchesi as well. So, Chris, your final thoughts. Question with your thought. What is the next move for the Mets? What do you think is the next move? And your final thoughts.
That's a loaded question. I've been saying this 2 moves ago that they're going to sign Justin Turner, and that I thought that it was the perfect time to sign Justin Turner. And guess what? I'm sticking to it. We talked about the DH here. We got asked, who was our preference at DH? The Mets stove hot. Justin Turner. Absolutely. Justin Turner. Give me him at DH. Make this lineup more balanced and better by default by adding in that balanced bat to the lineup behind Pete Alonso. Let's hope for bounce back years from Brett Beatty and Starling Marte. And I think the lineup is ready to go. Like I said, Are these moves, these are my final thoughts, are these moves the moves that we would have wanted at the beginning of the season? No. I wouldn't want Sean Manaea. If it was the beginning of the season, I wouldn't be sitting here as excited about Sean Manaea. Someone told me at the beginning of the offseason that we're going to sign Sean Manaea. I'd have been like, what the hell? What are we doing? But at this juncture of the offseason, we have to realize and we just have to accept that this team is going to be competing for a back-end wild card spot. We're not up here tooting the Mets' horn. We're not up here to tell you that they're going to win the division, expect 90 to 100 wins. We're not delusional. We are never going to tell you that. We're going to keep that as objective as possible. As objective as possible. But at this juncture of the season, given where this roster is going, a Sean Manaea makes sense. A Harrison Bader makes sense. Provides balance, flexibility, versatility. All those fun words applies to these signings. Let's go get Justin Turner to answer your question. Give me him as a DH. Perfect time by midweek. What is it? Wednesday is the 10th, right? By the 10th, I want to see Justin Turner. I want to see that report coming in, a passing bomb saying Justin Turner has signed for either a 1-year or a 2-year deal with the New York Mets. And lastly, guys, I appreciate everyone tuning in. It was a great discourse, great discussion. Everybody in the comment section providing their thoughts and opinions, whether you agree with us, disagree with us, that's okay. We like hearing your thoughts and opinions. Make sure you're commenting. Make sure you're subscribing and hitting that thumbs up to both channels. Rob's specifically, he does all the work on these backgrounds, sets it all up, the scheduling, all that good stuff. I appreciate him having me on and the rest of the roundtable. And for me at CPNY Sports, you can find it in the description down below or in the comment section. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Almost to 400 subscribers, floating around 368, 370, somewhere around there. So get me to 400. I thoroughly appreciate the support from everybody. And like I said, let's go Mets.
Absolutely. And Easy just said it in the comments, competition is key to this team because last year there was no competition. Everybody, even if you were bad, got positions that they didn't deserve. And I think the competition is only going to help this team get better. And don't forget, Wednesday, Ibby and John are going to have Terry Collins on their Till Mets Do Us Part podcast
Absolutely.
on Wednesday. So check that out for sure. Once again, guys, thank you for tuning in. Final thoughts is, I believe what Chris is saying. Justin Turner on Wednesday, the 10th. Let's make that happen, David Stearns. If you're watching, make it happen. Damn it, make it happen.
Make it happen.
Make it happen, baby. Let's go. With that said, thank you for watching, guys. Another Mets Stove Hot in the books. Sean Manaea and Harrison Bader, new Mets. Let's see what the Mets do next, guys. Everybody, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Chris, have a good night. See you next time, guys. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.
Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go?